November 7th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, Redevelopment, Successor Agency, and Financing Authority. I'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the Pledge of Allegiance, which tonight is going to be led by our colleague, Mark Johannesson.
Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the council did meet in closed session this evening to confer with our real property negotiator regarding properties at 1200 Linden Road, 500 Jefferson, and 304 B Street, and the East Riverfront property. Those are respectively with Lutheran, Yolo County, and California State Parks, respectively. To confer with our legal counsel regarding one item of existing litigation. The case number is listed in our agenda, City of West Sacramento versus R&L Resources Management, and one item of substantial exposure to litigation, letter from Scott Cafferty, and that's it. All right, so with that, we're going to proceed to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, the state law prohibits us from having a discussion or taking action on items that are being brought up under 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. We do ask that anyone that's here to address the council on this or any other agenda item this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and turn it into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer, and we use the timer to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be heard. And so to that end, we ask that folks limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. Also in front of the timer, the clerk is a good old-fashioned flip chart, and that simply indicates which agenda item is currently being considered. The clerk accepts the cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item, except for 1A, which doesn't have a staff report, but all the way up to the end of the staff report. Once the public testimony, the council questions has begun, we don't take any additional speaking cards. So if you're here for a specific item, please be sure to get the card in as soon as you can, but definitely before the end of the staff report. And then finally, we do recognize that for some folks, speaking in public causes anxiety, hives, and a variety of other uncomfortable conditions. So we'd ask that there not be any boos or cat calls or even applause or other demonstrations, and we try to maintain a civil, neighborly discourse here in the chambers. So with that, we have a couple requests to speak under item 1A. The first is by Anthony Latanzio.
How you doing? You know, I've been here for 35 years. Congratulations, you won again. I like it. Hey, you know, there's a major drug problem on my street, Solano Street. I mean, I've been here 5 years ago when the other chief of police, and I met him. I'm back again. This is heroin and meth, and they're all needle users. I had to concrete my front yard because my kids, they're pitching the needles. Now I worry about my dogs. There's got to be something that you can do for me. I'm a Vietnam vet. I have a son that's in the Air Force. I have a daughter in the Navy. What more can I do for you? 35 years. You want me to bleed in front of you? Come to my house and stay and see what goes on. You can ask that officer there. He knows what goes on. I mean, please, you make me feel like you got something against me. If you do, bring it out. Let's get it over with. Can't you help me? Can't you help the senior citizens? I'm 66 years old. Everybody on my block is senior citizens except for 4 families, and they're afraid to come here and say anything. I live right next door to it. The dude just got out of jail. He's got ankle bracelets, monitors, you name it. You know, I don't want to bring up his name, 746 Solano is the address. Look into it. You got to be able to help me. 3-4 people moved away. What do you can't, 35 years I'm paying tax. He hasn't paid in 5 to 8 years. It's public record. Taxes, is that fair to anybody in here that pays taxes? On their property. And he's selling drugs. If it's sales, why don't he have a license? I mean, I had a tow truck business when I retired. I had to get a license in West Sac, even though my business was in Sacramento. I'm not saying, I'm just being a smart, you know. How could he do this? How can you let him get away with this? You know? I'm just asking you for help. If you have anything against me, Bring it out now. Let's get it over with. It's like, I feel like you guys think I'm not credible. Maybe I'm an ex-motorcycle club member. I mean, what's that got to do with the price of tea in China? You know, I also play for the Tractors, which is a major band. They got music on the radios, okay? Let's Go Stumbling. You know, I mean, come on, man. Can't you help me? And can't you help the community? Bike trails are good, this and that. But if your kids go next door and get on that heroin or that meth, you will need bike trails. I mean, I got nothing against that. Ask the firemen how many people they pulled out of that house. There was a guy in the bathtub for 10 hours, 8 hours, they told me, dead. They walk him down the block as if they're drunk in between two of them, and they dump them where the old church used to be on Lisbon and Solano. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's a new couple that moved in front. The guy is in and out all day long with a car. What's that mean? He's making deliveries.
Yeah, Mr. Latanzi, I got to ask you to wrap up.
What's that?
I have to ask you to wrap up. The time's
Oh,
up.
okay,
Time's expired.
no problem. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Please help me.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn to Larry Langford in a minute, if Larry want to come up. But I think, Mr. City Manager, we were at the last, when Mr. Latanzi was here at the last meeting, I think we were anticipating a follow-up and a report back to council as well, which we haven't received yet. So I don't,
Yes.
you don't need to share the details of any of the specific situation, but I can definitely guarantee that no one has anything against Mr. Latanzio. So if we can get the full report on the status of that situation, I think the council is very interested.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And we can also provide an update to the property owner or the resident.
Yes, no, please do, but I think we also want to know what is this, these are serious issues that have been raised, and I think the council wants to know, wants to get an assessment of what's going on, so. All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Langford.
Thank you. I know I've heard him speak numerous times about the same issue, but I just wanted to come here tonight and say congratulations, Mr. Cabalden, Mr. Ledesma, also Ms. Guerrero. Extend my appreciation and congratulations to Ms. Alcala, Ms. Kirby Gonzalez, and to Mr. Preston Jackson for their school board selections. And also thank all of those people who ran for the different public offices. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but I know many people appreciate their efforts in wanting to get involved. With that said, I hope you've all seen the Facebook West Sacramento Community Discussion Board comment made by Dan, I think it's Dan or Don Johnson today. It's a letter basically to the City Council, to you also, Mayor, giving suggestions after this contentious election, difficult election that we just had, but suggestions on how we can work together as a city for the community and to make it better. If you don't have a copy of it, don't have access to it, please let me know. I'd be happy to get you a copy of it as well. And finally, Mr. Cabalden, I just have a question for you. The other day there was a post on your mayoral Facebook page, and I went to open it and to make a comment. Nothing negative, nothing derogatory. I had to go ask my wife why I couldn't find where to put a reply on it, and she just laughed at me and said, "You've been blocked." I don't understand why I would have been blocked. I don't really even recall ever making any comments on it. If I did, I can promise you there was nothing contentious in there at all or confrontational. So I just wonder why, and I would like to find out why I know so many other people have been blocked from your mayoral Facebook page. And if you could answer that, I would greatly appreciate it. All I ask from you guys with this city, I've lived here all my life, been very involved, and as I know you've seen my wife here on numerous occasions, and as well as the school board, is that we work together as a city. We have open lines of communication. We work together, not just certain individuals or certain groups or certain parties or anything else. But in order to make or to keep West Sacramento as great as it has always been, we need to have open lines of communication all the way across the board, where I listen to you, or we listen to you, but you guys listen to us as well. The gentleman that just walked out, as I said, I've heard him speak on numerous occasions here on the same issue. And it's the first time I've ever heard you ask for direction on it from someone, and I greatly appreciate that, and I'm sure he will too. But I want to keep the city great, as I know you guys do. So all I ask is that we work together as a community, as our leaders, as the people that live here, work together, listen to each other, hear each other, and talk to each other. So again, congratulations to everyone that got elected. Greatly appreciate it and look forward to you guys continuing with the great things in the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. All right, so with that, then we're going to proceed to item 1B, which is council communications. Are there reports or other communications? Councilmember Sandine?
Thanks. The West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency met on October 18th, and we approved 2 contract awards for plant propagation and delivery of California native plant materials for floodplain restoration as part of the Southport Early Implementation Project. We also honored Bill Denton with a proclamation on his retirement from over 50 years of service on RD 900 and 26 years of service with WSAFCA. And we were also provided an update on the levy program. And then LAFCO's YED Fall 2018 Summit was held here in West Sacramento at our community center on October 24th. I was able to provide greetings to the group and gave some background on how our community center came to be and how it was developed. And the summit focus was on community engagement, and John Robinson, our deputy city manager, presented on Zen City for West Sacramento at that presentation. Really got kudos and good comments. On October 25th, the mayor and I participated in Flood Preparation Week at Elkhorn Elementary, and it's great. Annually we're visiting the schools, and I think many of the council members have done this, and wonderful. And then earlier tonight, the Port Commission met, and we approved a construction contract for the Berth 7 paving project, at the North Terminal, and then we approved a purchase and sale agreement for a 16.5-acre residential development south of the Barge Canal. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Orozco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of these items are not specifically commission meeting related. However, I do want to report on the Downtown Streets team. Many of us know that they have hit the streets and are cleaning up and beautifying our city. I have a report from the month of October that delineates how well they have done. Specifically, we've had 14 to 15 members on the streets each week, and on the week of October 1st, they removed 1,880 gallons of debris from the streets. The following week, on the week of October 12th, we had 3,320 gallons of debris removed. On the week of October 19th, which was actually a very busy week, there were 146 40-gallon bags, so that's 5,840 gallons of debris. And finally, the week of Halloween, October 26th, there is about 2,560 gallons of debris that are being removed from the streets of West Sacramento. They are going to be putting many of the workers, our teammates, through SHARPS training. So soon the debris removal will include the removal of hypodermic needles. So they'll be receiving training to specifically handle that type of debris. Most importantly, there's a lot of positive feedback from having people in our community work in the community and feel I've heard it from the members, the street team members, as well as from members of our community who are very, very positive in receiving our new teammates. So kudos to Downtown Streets team. Secondly, West Sacramento was in the news, Good Day Sacramento on Sunday, this past Sunday, as the community, many of the members of our community came out and did a donation drop-off. Many people came out to provide shampoo and body wash and other much-needed necessities by people in need in our community. It's so much that there was a full truckload of items donated by members of our community at this only the first drop-off drive. And ultimately, those items will be assembled into care packages by children in West Sacramento as they learn how to give back during the holidays. So you'll hear more about that outside of this council meeting, but I just wanted to highlight that our community is very alive and well, and I appreciate Mr. Langford's comments that those are the highlights, and I think we can build upon in our community to really, highlight that. And finally, just one final comment. I know this is kind of outside of my normal comments when I'm talking about the committees that I'm part of, but I had a very unique experience in West Sacramento. I think it's very timely, given that we just had an election yesterday. It came to my attention yesterday by a member of the community that there was a family that was essentially trying to graduate from living in their car to at least a little bit more permanent housing situation, and they were in great need. And thanks to some members of our community, I'm not going to say the name, but it rhymes with Benice Bomke, offered to help. And I went over to IKEA today to find some just basic necessities for this family. And it's a great show of humanity and partnership in our community and just good business. IKEA sponsored 3 large bags full of items at no cost, just to support members of our community. And I'm not saying this is a regular thing. I mean, I want everybody to just show up to IKEA and ask for their free bags. But we take care of our own in West Sacramento. And it was highlighted today by the actions of people in our community who had nothing more to gain other than just doing good for others. So I have to applaud that, and it makes me very proud to be a West Sacramentan.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to report on one event I attended and helped host, which is on Tuesday, October 30th, was a signing ceremony for the yellow HCP, NCCP. Finally got to sign the documents which put those permits into place. It was held on the 30th at Riverwalk Park, and I want to thank Councilmember Sandine and the Mayor Cabalden for also attending that with a host of others from throughout Yellow County, signifying our completion of the HCP-NCCP permit process. It was a very wide array of Yellow County current and past elected officials who have served on that board at one time or another over his 20 years of work, but rightly so, to signify the completion of that project. Also in attendance that day was Paul Souza from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and Chuck Bonham, who's the director of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's an important project and a very windy but very nice day at the Riverwalk Park, and I want to thank city staff who helped coordinate that. Paul and Cindy and everybody else who were over in the city helped pull that together. Really appreciate the effort, and West Sac showed really well what's an important part of our the policies we have here and overseas. So I just want to thank everyone for their efforts.
All right, yeah, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma. It's been one of the most challenging projects that the city that council members had to take on and lead with absolutely no glory or gratitude. Hopefully no one will ever know, because it just works. But I know the enormous amount of time and stress and your particular expertise in financial management but for that entire project would have fallen apart. And it's so essential. Simultaneously, it's so essential to economic development and our communities of general plan objectives, but also to protecting species and protecting habitat. And both of those fundamental objectives would have been in great jeopardy if it weren't for the really tremendous work that you did with your colleagues and as a leader of that board. So thank you really very much for that work. A couple, the SACOG Transportation Committee, excuse me, we've wrapping up the programming of all of the various regional funding programs. The SACOG programs a large amount of federal and state funds on a regional basis that's competitive in a couple of different programs. Community design program. I think the best example of community design in our city is the West Capitol streetscape improvements and the improvements down Tower Bridge Gateway. Those are the most visible markers of the kinds of things that program funds. The regional program, which funds some of the big important projects in the region, and we've won regional project funds for things like the Harbor Interchange and other major pieces of infrastructure here in the city. And then a new program that's been created called the Green Region grant program, which supports the region's goals around energy and climate change, and also, and importantly, on emissions, in order for us to meet our state requirements for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We submitted 4 applications for those 3 programs. West Sacramento did, so they were presented to the Transportation Committee, which I chair at SACOG, earlier this month. And we did very well. And, all 4 of our applications were funded at some level. I can't name another city in the region that came close to that. And there are those cities that didn't apply for anything. There are cities that applied for one thing and might have gotten it. But no one had the number of applications, and certainly nobody had the number of successful applications that we did. And it's a real credit to the work at our staff. Because it's not that other cities don't have really great projects. and important things that they're trying to get done in their cities too. But it takes a really sharp staff to be able to identify, okay, not just what do we want to build, but what's going to win the grant. And, these last few weeks there's been a lot of discussion about grants. Why don't we just get a grant for this and a grant for that? There aren't very many grants for much of anything, but they do exist. And so, I'm really thankful and grateful that our staff team is so adept at both seeing the opportunities hidden in some grant program that nobody's heard of, but then really does the hard work of figuring out, okay, you get 16 points for this and only 12 points for that. Okay, we better emphasize this aspect of the project. And that's why there are 4 awards that are recommended that our committee gave the green light to put out for public comment. The final vote on them will be taken next month. But the 4 projects that we applied for based on these programs were road rehabilitation and safety improvements at the west end of West Capitol Avenue. West Capitol Avenue that end of West Capitol Avenue is obviously heavily used by trucks and requires more roadway rehabilitation than many other streets in the city. But also this is the area where, for a variety of reasons, we've had significant pedestrian and bicycle on truck collisions in that area, and that's largely due to the engineering of the street because it's so wide it feels like you're driving on a freeway. And for a variety of reasons, it's an area where you will at times find pedestrians in the middle of the street at 2 in the morning, which a truck is not expecting. And so these improvements are intended to provide more buffered and protected bike lanes and enhance pedestrian crossings. And it's a $2 million grant that's on the way. The second is the Washington District Gateway Project. This is a grant that fully funds the construction of the almost 1 mile bicycle trail that connects from Riverwalk Park at the I Street Bridge all the way to the Broderick Boat Ramp. Plus an extension of the trail essentially around the I Street Bridge, down D Street to 2nd Street to 3rd Street to connect the trail directly to the businesses at Washington Square, and then connect back to the trail on the other side, in particular so that in the winter months when you cannot go under the bridge in order to continue the trail access, this will provide an alternative. But it will also be a big benefit for the local businesses in that area because the grant also includes improvements and streetscape improvements there, sidewalk and others, and mid-block crossing on 3rd Street. So that's a significant one. Third was the West Sacramento Plug-in Partnership. So we were the biggest winner of all the cities in the region for this program. This is in the Green Region program, and it will fund about 50 of the level 2, 50 dual port level 2 electric vehicle chargers, and another 25 single port of the even faster direct current chargers. Plus the purchase of a few demonstration electric vehicles. But that takes the number of charging stations in West Sacramento up by a lot. And we have a lot of electric vehicle users in the city, and we would have more if there was more available charging, including at things like apartment buildings. Where it's not possible for a renter to install a charging station, and so they're at the mercy of their landlord to be able to have an electric vehicle at all. And for many landlords, the economics don't work. This grant will help in that space too. So. Virtually nobody won the grants that they applied for in that program, but we did, and got the full award of $2.665 million. And then finally, we had applied for some additional money for the I Street Bridge Replacement Project, I think as the council is aware, because of the Coast Guard's changes in their expectations about the expectations, it makes it sound kind of nicer than it is. Their requirements that the bridge engineering accommodate wide barges when open, that doubled the cost of the I Street Bridge replacement from 80 million to 80 or 85 million to 170 million dollars in an estimate, all at once. So the federal government will make up most of that gap, but not all of it. So we had applied to SACOG for I think $21 million, and the recommendation is to award us $7 million. So that's a significant chunk of the Coast Guard gap essentially that we had. So that's really good. Those are good news, and I don't expect any problems there are other cities that are trying to change some of the grants in order to get money, but as long as we're chairing the committee, that's not going to happen. So we'll have these grants come forward next month for final approval. Also, I know the council is aware, but it was a big deal that we launched the college savings account as part of the West Sacramento Home Run last week, and the state treasurer of California, John Chung, who's also the chair of the Scholar Share College Savings Account 529 Program Board for Came to announce that they had decided to double our money, essentially, for college savings accounts. So we had budgeted for a $50 savings account for every child in West Sacramento who goes to preschool, goes to a high-quality preschool, and I see Carolyn Castillo-Pearson, who was the very first chair, the leader behind the Universal Preschool for West Sacramento initiative. So we're trying to encourage families, we're not trying to encourage the children, but their parents to go to high-quality preschool. So a young person that goes to high-quality preschool, which includes all the high-quality preschools in West Sacramento, and then when that child enrolls in kindergarten, a $50 529 college savings account would be established in their name. That's a big deal. The research is there's been a lot of research on these programs in other states, and having any college savings accounts, even if it's only $20, dramatically increases the likelihood of a young person going to college by 3 times, by 7 times if neither the parents went to college themselves. That's for under $100 for a college savings account. So it's a very big deal. It doesn't cost us that much, but it's a strong signal for college preparation and expectations. So the state treasurer came to announce that they were doubling our money. So now every child entering kindergarten from a high-quality preschool will get a $100 college savings account in West Sacramento. And I believe we're the first city in the state to have universal college savings accounts that matches up with the work that we've done on preschool. So it was a really big, exciting day at Stonegate Elementary, and I know members of the council were there. Really appreciate the support. A lot of excited kids and teachers who can already see the lighting up of children and their parents about what's possible and what's expected. The streetcar, Congressman Matsui convened a meeting on the streetcar project at the end of last week to try to get all the ducks in order in terms of these final stages. I think the council's aware, we are out to bid now for the construction of the streetcar lines. The streetcar cars themselves, that bid already came in 2 months ago, and it was under budget, so we're in good shape on that one. But the biggest cost of the whole project is installing the rails and everything else. So we're waiting for that bid to come back as well. We have no idea what it's going to be, given steel in China and tariffs and labor costs and everything else. It could be any which way, but we're hopeful that the bid will come in within budget or close, and our federal government partners are also optimistic. So we expect to have those bids. It sounds like maybe January or February from Regional Transit, which would be the key milestone for the project in terms of going forward next. We hosted the American Competitiveness Exchange here in the city at Bayer Crop Science. We can my sense of time over the last 3 weeks is a little off. So it might have been a month ago. It could have been earlier today. But we hosted. It's an exchange program between the United States and essentially the rest of the Western Hemisphere. So we hosted minister-level delegates from most of Latin America and the Caribbean, and a couple of European countries that want to be Americans, Latin Americans, I guess, at Bayer to promote. They were here to learn about innovation and innovation, particularly in the food and ag space. As part with West Sacramento and Bayer being the Central Valley anchor of a larger Bay Area ecosystem. So they had visited Silicon Valley and everything else that is obligatory, but they were here then because UC Davis and Bayer are kind of anchors of that work here. So I was there to welcome them, but also to encourage them to think about some of the work that we're doing in the food space and with the Bayer collaborator to do additional startup work and other innovation as well, and build some international partnerships. And so trying to continue our development as a global food hub. We also, I presented at the California Center for Land Recycling the week before. California Center for Land Recycling is the state's main organization that deals with brownfields, and they had, because of West Sacramento's kind of steady progress and success on cleaning up brownfields and Superfund sites and getting grants and actually building projects as a result. They're well aware of what we've been doing in that space, partly because Aaron Laurels and his colleagues and from the city staff have been so active. But they wanted to understand, how does that work, how does it happen, and what are the potential roles of the EIFDs and other tools in order for that to happen. So they were really excited to see West Sacramento present the statewide keynote at the Center for Land Recycling in Carson, California. So sometimes we don't know what our reputation is elsewhere, but there was a lot of interest in seeing what was happening here. And then finally, we also hosted across the street last week the American Planning Association session on innovation and Civic Lab, the SACOG partnership that we're not formally a part of because we're quote-unquote too advanced in civic innovation, but is an important opportunity to showcase some of the technology and other innovation work that the city's doing around civic engagement and mobility in particular, as the second round of Civic Lab moves forward. So, lot been going on. All right, so with that, we've item 1C, which is appointments to boards and commissions. We don't have any appointments this evening, but just want to emphasize that the deadline for applications for boards and commissions for residents of West Sacramento who we hope will step forward and volunteer to serve on commissions that deal with all kinds of issues in the city. That deadline is November 16th. It's earlier this year than it has been in the past. The city clerk has wanted to get ahead of it, and she has successfully. And I know we already have over 100 applications, and we'll probably have a couple or 300 by the time we're done. But really want to emphasize the important opportunity that it is for residents, but also the city government depends on civic engagement and citizens stepping forward to volunteer, and just to emphasize, it's not necessary to be an expert in anything. With the Utilities Commission, we're not looking for people who are sewer scientists. It's fine if you are. We don't discriminate against sewer engineers, but we're not looking for that. We pay people for their technical expertise. We're looking for citizens who have some common sense, who want to help govern and lead and chart a future for the city. So certainly would encourage folks to apply. And then those applications will go to council members as per our protocols. Each of the members of the council, including Councilmember-elect Guerrero, will be invited to submit nominations for each of those commissions as well. So we're with an intention of trying to make the set of appointments this year in mid-December, if possible. So this is the first time we're on this accelerated schedule that the city clerk is trying to promote in order to make our deadlines for commissions to be active in January. Okay, then that brings us to item 2, which is presentation of a proclamation recognizing Mark Johannesson for 12 years of service as a member of the city council. First, is there a motion on the proclamation?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Sandine and seconded by whoever the city clerk heard first. And is there any discussion on the proclamation? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions, so that motion carries. Proclamation is adopted. I'm going to present the proclamation in a moment, but I suspect that there are members of the council might want to say a word or two. So I'm going to turn first to Councilmember Sandine.
Well, I want to thank you, Councilmember Johannesson, Mark, for helping me when I first joined the council. You extended a hand and reached out and were really helpful to me. In fact, you offered to host a couple community forums with me, and I really appreciated the guidance and getting me out to talk to community members. And I know that you have a history of doing that, and so I really was inspired by that. And then being able to co-chair the age-friendly advisory committee with you was so important to the city, but it was a real treat to sit side by side with you and co-chair at one meeting after another. And I think we really accomplished a lot there. And I know that I will make sure, because co-chairing that with you, that we continue that work as well. All of our colleagues here. I really appreciate all the work you've done in the homelessness sphere, dealing with housing. I think of you as our tech guy, the guy who brought code for Hood here, and all the things you've pushed us to think about. So I'm going to really miss having you on council, but I want to thank you for your friendship and for your service and for your dedication to this community. Thank you.
Roscoe?
Yes, thank you. Well, when I think of Mark Johannesson, I think of someone who is reflective and thoughtful and very intelligent. The first time I saw you, you were on a panel for voters, and you were presenting your case for seeking election to the council, re-election. And I remember being so impressed, not only with your intellect, but also with your commitment to doing this job, which sometimes is thankless. Over these last 2 years, I've seen you be a leader in so many different realms, whether it be working with our active aging community, whether it be, as Councilmember Sandine mentioned, as our tech guy, moving West Sacramento forward technologically, and also as a leader, you know, in looking at social issues such as homelessness that face our city. And I tell you, watching you work, it's been a pleasure. It has also been a true pleasure and honor to serve with you. You're a true man of your community. You are going to be so greatly missed. And I'm very happy for this new chapter in your life, and I'm just very appreciative of the 12 years you gave this city. And I know that you're not going to be a stranger to us. But thank you for leaving this legacy.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
So Mark, this is the first election in, 12 years we haven't been on the ballot together? And the first one, I'm just getting over because you beat me in my first one in 2006. But it's been a real pleasure serving with you for the last 8 years and getting to know you better. I think what council members Sandine and Orozco have brought up are all the areas that you have certainly filled in this community. It's particularly around being a leader. Before it was something that was really popular in this community, or not popular, but certainly a focus versus homeless. You were doing the hard work with the county and everybody else on the homeless strategy. And it really kind of brought to light to us when it was completed how much more work we had to do, and it led to a lot of things we did, including the Bridge to Housing pilot we did with the county. But your work with the elderly and the senior community has been absolutely a really bright spot of what I saw as leadership. And even a few weeks ago, just in terms of seeing seniors, and at the senior center here across the street and visited, and just it makes me think of the work you've done to try to connect seniors to the services in this community. And I think that's a legacy you can be proud of. You know, there's the tech stuff, and you've always been having an interest in that, but I felt like your real passion and your heart laid in that area. And I think the seniors in this community are forever grateful for making sure they have a place in this community. They have the services community we did via. You made sure that they were connected with that. And I think that is your legacy here amongst many. It's been a terrific journey getting to know you better. I think we've become very good partners in this city. I certainly have appreciated you. You made being an attorney on this council popular or the thing before we had a second one. But that is helpful to have a legal mind, especially in your field. And you're always one that was trying to find common ground among all of us and trying to ensure the community had space where we were coming at it from a policy perspective or from some requirement perspective. You're always one trying to bridge us to a place where the community can move forward. So I just want to say thank you. I truly respect the council member you have been, the public servant you have been. You have been an honorable public servant, and I think the community will never know the sacrifices you have made, your family has made to be here. We understand it, but I know you've been traveling a lot to maintain and maintain your family, but more importantly, to be here in our community and serve it as well as you have. So really a sincere from Maria. I don't think she made it tonight. She was trying to. And I just want to pass along our deep thanks for all your service.
We have had a complicated relationship over over a long period of time, which beginning with us being at loggerheads over and over and over and over again. I think when you ran for council, I was like, no, under no circumstances, I'm going to fight to the death to stop Mark Johannesson from getting elected. And the voters thought otherwise. They thought better. And then to repay me, you ran against me 2 years later. But this is what I love about this place and about you and about the council, that that is part of what makes us that brings the different ideas, and it makes everybody better. And ultimately, as we took this journey together, and we could see, day after day, well, okay, why are we loggerheads? These things that you keep talking about, the technology stuff, because like every single issue for 12 years. Well, Mr. City Manager, isn't there a way that like we could use technology to do this cheaper and faster and better service? And the city manager, oh God, and I'm thinking, isn't there a way that we could be using tech? But I don't want to agree with Mark, so I'm not going to say anything. But isn't there a way that we could use technology? And you'd be constantly saying, we have to pay attention to economic development, and what does this mean for business and for the development process too? And same thing. And we were both doing other things too, and in politics outside of our city, at one point or another, drew us away from where our heart really was. To try to serve our city in a different way. And we both, after going through that in our own times, me in 2008 and you in 2014, came back and said, I don't want to go in that place with the dome. This is where you can really do something. This is where it matters. This is where my heart is. And we went on the journey at different times, but we came to the same exact place. And so everything that's been said, I completely agree with, but knowing it clear-eyed that it wasn't like we were just gifted to each other. We had to fight to get to the point where we have been for these last few years, working on all pistons to really deliver a better community. And I have so much respect for who you are as a leader, the journey that you've taken, how you've adapted and learned and fought back, and everything about you. I think is I'm really sorry that you are that your time here is gone. We also have very different perspectives about the world. I mean, you're as a family law conflict resolution attorney. That's almost the exact opposite of how I approach issues. You're always like, well, if there's 16 ways of thinking about it, let's just bring everybody together, and if we talk about it long enough, it'll all get solved. I want to know, like, show me the data. Let me see the numbers. Let me see the science behind it, and the yin and the yang of those. In the moments, we drive each other crazy, but in the end, when we've done both things, magic has happened over and over and over again, and I think we're going to miss in a lot of ways that approach to just looking at problems and letting them breathe a little bit, and letting people just live in them for a little while, and not rushing to solve everything all at once, all of the time, and to be an adult. I think you've been saying this a lot in the last 6 or 9 months, to be an adult in how we make, how we approach decisions, and that we're here to govern together. The city is not mainly to come together just to shout what we want, but also to contribute to the solutions and roll up our sleeves. And you've done that as, leading the Friends of the Library, leading the Historical Society, and we've all been in those organizations, so we know how it works. It's not like you campaign for those. It's like okay, somebody has to be the president next year. Who's willing to do it? And you've always stepped up to do that in your community. You were one of the first to develop an email newsletter in the city and to really connect with people in different ways, and really try to engage people in their city in an important way. But even if you had done none of those things, if all you had done has brought Charlotte and Jim to town, and that transformative influence that they have had on their neighborhood, on their city, on seniors and everybody else, if that's all you had accomplished, was to introduce us to them, and the massive heart that they bring to our community and the inspiration that they give people to just try a little harder to work the city and listen a little bit more and put up with a little screaming and yelling a little bit. That would be enough for a 12-year proclamation to recognize the outstanding service. So I'm really proud to have had the chance to work with you, and I only regret that I never got to see you perform in Velvet Underground or in remind me, or some of the other, music that I don't normally, that kind of music I don't normally listen to, but the whole other side of Mark Johannesson that we never got to see here at council, the many flavors and colors that you bring to the work that we do is something, well, I know I'll truly miss. And congratulations on the outstanding accomplishments that you've brought to the city, the impact that you've made, and thanks for your service. And I think maybe we can present a proclamation first, and then give you the chance to say something. All right. We can, yeah. Let's go. Yeah. All right, so I'm not going to read a proclamation because I just talked for 45 minutes about you. But it is my honor to present both this memento, the timeless impact that you've had on our community, and how much progress going around and around and around. It's like one of those old movies. How much has improved in our community because of your leadership and your heart. And then this proclamation on behalf of just to read the resolve clause now, therefore be proclaimed that the City Council of the City of West Sacramento recognizes Mark Johannesson for his enormous contributions to the City of West Sacramento and wishes Mark health and happiness in his future endeavors.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the very kind comments. I was kind of thinking about what would be a good thing to say after 12 years of being on the city council. And I really think it's kind of a lesson in civics, and civility and cooperation. I've been really fortunate over the course of the time I've been on city council to have worked with a council that's supporting each other. There's no bickering, everything's very civil. And we've actually come to agreement on major items collaboratively. And it's really for someone who's running for office, it's as good as it can get. So, we all come into council with our different priorities. And, one of the things that we can do is we can set priorities up here, and each of us have whatever we ran on or developed over the course of our terms. It takes staff really to implement that. So I'd really like to thank Aaron, Jeff, of course, who's been around for a while, Amanda, department heads, and all the staff that are coming up to the meetings, because without that support, we really can't get anything done. So I really appreciate that. And so, there's really not a good time to leave. Christopher mentioned a bit, my wife has had a job in Santa Cruz now for 4 years, and I've been traveling back and forth for close to 4 years now. So the choice was either I really love West Sacramento, but frankly, I love my wife more. and so to re-up for another 4 years would just not have flown. So I'm sad to be leaving. Of course, I'm leaving some unfinished business, and it's kind of the nature of this job. We've got the age-friendly plan, and Bab Sandine, I think, is a real champion on that. Karina's really looks like she's going to be taking up the homeless issue and working with that. So I really feel confident, and of course, Christopher is behind the kind of the smart technology and the use of technology to help better government and improve lives of people. So I really feel confident that this city is going to continue to move forward with those policy issues that I felt strong. And I'm really congratulate Martha for her win on city council. I think she's going to be a good addition to this city council. I think she's going to be able to add a good perspective. And that really, when you look at our city council, we now have, it's got to be the most diverse city council in the state. I'm really proud of that. It's going to be a majority of women running the city council. I think it's great. It's a great thing that's happened, and I'm glad that folks supported that. So I want to thank you all, my council members, for the proclamation. Thank you for being with me through the years of all this. Thank you, city staff, for supporting this and really having the initiative to move forward with our policies. And I also like to thank all the folks over the years who voted for me and supported me. And I see a lot of you folks in the audience. And I hope I haven't disappointed you, and I've made you not regret your vote. So thank you very much. Thank you.
I think Mark might be the shyest person to ever serve on the city council when it comes to adulation, but well-deserved, so. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, thank you.
All right, with that, we're going to turn, and just for anyone, any audio curiosity, we are, this is November, obviously the election results are still incomplete. There are additional provisional ballots to be counted by the county clerk, and that, because so many people voted. Do you have the final results, Mr. Villegas? Oh, so because so many people voted, there are a lot of provisional ballots, and so that we don't know when the count will, the final canvass will be completed. I say that only to note that we do not know at which council meeting yet the new council member-elect Guerrero will be sworn into office. It will be in December, but we don't know at which meeting. And so Councilmember Johannesson has painfully been informed and has, I think, painfully agreed that if necessary, this may not be his very last meeting. It might be, but those. So we wanted to make sure that we had the proper recognition tonight. So, all right. That then brings us to the consent agenda. Oh, Supervisor Villegas? Yes. Yeah, oh yes, Supervisor Villegas served with Councilmember Johannesson for many, many years also. So.
I did. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, I had the privilege of working with you, Mark, for 12 years on the City Council, and I just wanted to share, in addition to the eloquent way in which the Council and the Mayor have already expressed your commitment to this community, I would echo that 110%. But I wanted to just share one quick story that nobody else knows about, and that is an opportunity that I had to talk to Mark after a particular election, where I thought it was a bit gimmicky, but it was brilliant in many ways, and that is he vowed to make himself accessible more than anybody else running for office that particular year. He decided to use the big billboard signs and put his cell phone number on there to say, I'm going to be available. And while we all make ourselves accessible in many different ways, taking yourself and putting your cell phone on a 4x8 sheet up and down the city from one end to the other was something we had never seen before, and it seemed a little crazy at the time, and it was crazy. But the story ends beautifully, because I think it represented exactly who you were when one day I asked you after the campaign. I thought it was a bit gimmicky. I said, how did that work out? And you shared with me, I think, something you probably didn't share with a lot of people. You said, well, a lot of people didn't take advantage of it as much as you thought they were, but you did get one particular call from a gentleman who didn't want to talk about city politics or his issues at all. He simply called you because he was lonely and he had nobody to talk to ever. And I thought it was the beginning of a joke, but it was something very serious. And so I asked you, I said, well, so what did you do? And you said, well, I talked to him. I talked to him for about half hour. And I said, well, what'd you guys talk about? And you said, we talked about whatever he wanted to talk about. And I thought that was the coolest thing. I mean, a lot of us talk the talk and many of us walk the walk in different ways. But I thought you taking half hour during a critical time in a campaign where you're pressed for time as it is. And I remember that conversation, and you were very sincere, and I have no doubt you spent quality time with that gentleman. And who knows the circumstances that he was facing, but the fact that you took the time, you talked to him for half hour about absolutely whatever he wanted to talk about. I thought was super cool, and I never forgot that. So I thought that represented, thank you for making our community a better place and doing stuff like that. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you, Oscar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Supervisor. All right, now the consent agenda, which is items 3 through 11. Any items to remove or any item for separate question or comment?
5.
5. did you say?
Which number she called?
5.
Thank you.
I'm going to just a quick on 10 also, so. Okay, so item 5 is consideration and approval of a grant agreement with the Mercy Coalition of West Sacramento and adoption of Resolution 18-75 approving appropriation from the Measure E Fund. We had one request for public comment. Ms. Roscoe, did you want to do a question first, or
No, it's fine. We'll do public comment.
did you go on this also? Okay, so we're going to take public comment on it first, and that's by Venus Decoy.
Let's make sure. Ooh, okay, I hope you can hear me. Good evening. Thank you all for hearing my public comment. My name is Venus Decoy. I am the president of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul of Yolo County, and I've been a resident here in West Sacramento for 4 years. I wish to speak on agenda item number 5, which is the grant proposal for the Mercy Coalition to start our Winter Warming Center program. I wish to share that, one of the beautiful things about being West Sacramentan is that we take these small programs and turn them into great things, such as our River Walk programs, the Barn program, our VIA program, which is doing apparently fantastic, which I'm very happy also for. And I think that, to me, on behalf, and as a member of the Mercy Coalition, this is a project that can also turn into something great and make West Sacramento the magnanimous city that it always is, and to continue that magnanimous ability and just outpouring of charity and giving. Just as Councilmember Orozco mentioned earlier, that just our community is already ready and willing to do this work, and we hope, and it is my desire as representative of the community and West Sacramentan, that this is something you consider to fund. And that is all I've got to say, and I wanted to say thank you very much, and have a great evening.
Thank you. All right, now Ms. Orozco.
Thank you. I actually don't have many questions as much as I do want to express my support for item number 5. Several months ago, I had the opportunity to meet with Carolyn Castillo-Pearson, was a previous city council member and first Latina city council member in West Sac, so woohoo. That's right. And I was just pleased to have the opportunity to hear the proposal, the collaboration between several different faith-based organizations in our city and the leadership coming together. I mean, this organization has been very active in the West Sacramento community for years and doing wonderful things for people in need in our community. Specifically, one of the largest things is the lunch giveaway every single day of the week, weekdays, correct? And just understanding the very complex web of relationships that need to be managed in order to make sure that food can be delivered to people in our community that are hungry, that just want nothing more than a sandwich. And so I just have to say, to start this off, thank you. Thank you on behalf of everybody who's benefiting for all of your hard work and your commitment and dedication. And now you're trying to keep people warm, which many of us take for granted when we go home at night and pull the covers over our bodies and sleep under a roof. Speaking with Ms. Pearson was eye-opening. We had an opportunity to exchange ideas about the direction of how we'd like to reduce the impacts and incidences of homelessness in our community. And I'm proud to see that this item is on this agenda. I think Measure E funds are specifically directed to those two ends. And in my opinion, I think that this is definitely one of those. It would definitely reduce the impacts on the community of homelessness, and as well as on the homeless who would be otherwise sleeping on the streets, unfortunately, under very bad weather conditions. I'm excited also, though, to see that there's going to be some counseling and like project management, there's going to be an aspect and a responsibility aspect on behalf of the participants. And that's one of those things that I saw with Downtown Streets team, where they have, employment counseling. And as a side note, I did not announce this earlier, but we have 2 Downtown Streets team members who have been gainfully employed since the inception of this program. To Solomon, who's over at Dollar Tree on Harbor. And then also we have Barbara, who just started part-time work at Rayleigh's Supermarket. This is a pipeline for people in our community to seek a better momentum in their lives and to break the cycle that they have been experiencing, unfortunately. I just have to also commend the county of Yolo, and specifically our supervisor, Oscar Villegas, whose leadership in this realm has been commendable. And the county is matching the grant that if the city approves the grant today, we would have a matching partnership in this. So, I mean, that goes without saying that the county has been a fantastic partner and a great leader in this realm, and we appreciate that very much. What you do in this community to help the lives of other people, just to give them the dignity of a meal, and to recognize someone who otherwise might be ignored on the streets, is something that could be immeasurable to another person. And so I am in full support of item number 5 of the consent agenda, and I appreciate very much what you're doing.
Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
Thank you. Just wanted to echo a lot of Councilmember Orozco's comments here in support of this, and specific on 2 issues. First, I want to congratulate Carolyn and the team and Mercy Coalition. I know we talked about this in the past. This has been a passion of yours, and I know you've been trying to work with the city to try to find a solution for this, and very much needed service for our community and homeless. So just a real big thank you to all of you for your perseverance and continuing to try to find the solution to help those during the cold months of the year, and coming back with such a pretty thorough plan and about how you're going to address it, how you're going to operate it, how you're going to maintain it. Budgets completely, and I'll get to the budgeting side in a second, but you came back pretty thorough. Like, this is a business plan that makes sense for everybody, and allows me to make a decision on how we expend Measure E funds to meet its goals. But just so thank you for your perseverance, all of you, and to work out this to get this to solution. On the Measure E funds, I think this does match entirely what we are after in 2 ways. One, we said we need to reduce the impacts and the instances of homelessness. It's the stated goal we have with Measure E funds, and we imparted the policy of Measure E funds. We had to find real ways and impactful ways that we do that. So this accomplishes that. The second part, because it is helping people move them from places where they shouldn't be to find warmth or find food, it finds them a place to go. So I think that's an area where it is attempting to solve for that issue. And I'm looking forward to finding how we actually did, which is kind of what some feedback is, how do we measure that, how do we see how it worked, what can we improve upon if we want to try it again. It's kind of sort of what we did. We did that very well with the Bridge to Housing pilot a few years ago, was being able to track exactly what happened with folks afterward. And thank you for connecting the services, because that is an important part of it. And the other part too is thanks to the county, as Councilman Orozco has said, for stepping in, and as well for the other organizations who stepped in with funding for this as well. Measure E works because we could turn $1 into 2 or 3 or 4. And that's what we're doing. It's an area where we can apply it, leverage it from a fund, and use it towards something that accomplishes the goals we're after. So I think with that said, I'm just super pleased to see it just not be a grant program where we give it out and that we're the sole provider. We're creative, thanks to the partnership of the county and Supervisor Villegas for stepping into this, and it creates a model for us to see how we did and see if we can leverage it again, so those, and maybe find other people down the line to help. If it's successful, we can find other sources to help fund it. And so again, I'm just, couldn't be more proud. This is kind of a homegrown solution, and it's able to tap into the dollars that we said would be used for this. and in a way that we said they should be used. So again, the things I'll just ask for is to make sure we are measuring, as I said, how we did, and to make sure we can report back that those funds were successful and help people around, and being adaptable. So as we learn things about as people are moving in at the intake sites or whatever else, is to make sure we can adapt to any potential issues or problems, or we just got to make sure we're on top of those things because we want success. And so we have to be adaptable to what we find along the way. So I'm supportive of this. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Johannesson?
Yeah, I'm totally supportive of this as well, and I think the Mercy Coalition, Carolyn, Don, and Helena, you all in the group have been involved with this issue for, ever since I've been here. And I particularly like, we've always wanted like a cold shelter here. It's always been a real need. And this is, I think, again, it's a really good use of Measure E funds. And also, it's a good way to kind of collect the people. And I know you're going to try to incentivize case management, but it does give you the opportunity to get folks in the system, in which I think was one of the goals of the Bridge to Housing, is getting folks hooked up with services and case management, particularly with the folks that are, have issues, which we know a large portion of that the homeless population does. So totally supportive of this. I think you all are doing a great job, and we'll be very successful.
All right, so I agree with everything that's been said mostly. I want to channel a little Bill Christoph, which will require me to put my glasses on because I'm going to turn into green eye shades, council member, for a second. But stipulating to everything that has been, all the kudos to the coalition, to staff, and to others, and to the overall program here. But there's a couple pieces I want to pull out to really refine, because I mentioned Mr. Christoph because Measure E is very specifically about reducing the incidence of homelessness and the impact of homelessness on the community. And the reason why that was important, and the reason why, in order to get a unanimous vote here and support in the community, was that honestly, it's a very, if Measure E becomes about serving the homeless as the principal metric, it's a very slippery slope for the city, just in terms of our own resources. We don't have the ability to fill that role. And so those are the two metrics, and they are, as Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma said. But what is not here, the performance metrics don't reflect that. So it says that it's in attachment 4 in the Measure E analysis. So the outcomes are to reduce incidence of homelessness and the probability of injuries. But then the performance metrics are all participation metrics. And, how many people participated in the program, that's not going to tell us what we need to know, because we have to compare that. At the end of the day, we're going to be comparing this, compared to downtown streets, compared to other services and programs, to see which ones, all of whom have very plausible, persuadable, very legitimate theories of change, which are here, why we think they will work to do that, but we're supposed to be measuring whether they're doing that or not. And so simply, sort of counting how many people are there, or how many are accessing the service, or how many participants are asking for information for services that might lead to leaving homelessness is not enough. We've got to keep track. We have to be able to track whether or not we are actually reducing the number of homeless individuals in the city, and or reducing the community impact. It doesn't mean that we're not interested in the services directly, but the metrics that we have to meet for Measure E are those, incidence and impact. So I really want to ask staff to maybe not come back here, but propose or develop a different set of performance metrics that are not program participation, because program participation alone does not satisfy either the letter or the spirit of what Measure E was intending to do, and we will have no way to make comparisons about whether or not this is an effective expenditure versus others, and we have to ultimately. As part of our budgetary responsibilities. The second is on the priority placement. We've actually, as you know, we've had a lot of conversations here about our intention, particularly through Measure E funds, to focus on reducing the incidence of homelessness and getting folks out of homelessness who have WESAC ties. And so I noted in the staff report that the commission recommended the item, but that one commissioner said it's too complicated to do WESAC, so let's just leave it to Mark Sawyer. That's not good enough. We can't say only WESAC for some of the CDBG-funded housing programs, but Measure E we can. And so I understand the change was made as a result of the single commissioner, but that wasn't the action of the whole commission. And the direction that's come from here kind of repeatedly about these, around homeless, whether it was downtown streets or other programs, is we want to focus where we are trying to provide direct service. We want to focus first, not exclusively, but we want to focus first on folks who are homeless in our city and were, they became homeless as a resident of West Sacramento. They work in West Sacramento. Their family members are, they have a demonstrable tie to West Sacramento. And sure, Mark pays attention to that, but Mark is dealing with the entire homeless population in the city. Again, we've looked at language like this before as applies to some of the other programs, including downtown streets. But here we have complete flexibility because we're not bound by the federal home and CDBG rules. And so I don't know if you've considered either of those two issues, the performance metrics or the West Sac priority placement, or whether the manager has. But I'd be curious your, kind of the journey of how we got to those two elements of this.
We did, as we noted on the staff report, we had that conversation with the commission, and you're right, one of the commission members did note that he didn't feel that it would be necessary or would be the purpose of the Winter Warming Center to just identify West Sacramento homelessness, that the sole purpose of the warming center was to provide shelter to those in need. But our intent in having Mark Sawyer provide some type of a priority system was to get to that local preference in a different way. You're right, he does work with a lot of, all of the homeless in West Sacramento, but most of his caseload does involve West Sacramento residents or homeless that have a tie to West Sacramento. So that was how we tried to meet both of those objectives. Give a priority system to homelesses that were seeking out the services to become self-sufficient, and then, as a second priority, try to target those that had West Sacramento ties. But if the council feels that we need to be more specific and limited to that, we can certainly have a conversation with the coalition and see how we can do that. I know that they had also expressed some concern about having some those limits when they were looking at placing or filling the beds, but it's certainly a conversation that we can have with them again.
Yeah, I mean, these are priorities, right? The budgeting and serving need are almost exact opposite frames of reference and lenses on the world, and so it is essential that we split that. This program, the Measure E, is a small amount of money to deal with homelessness, and in part we're trying to demonstrate to the community that we're actually solving the problem that they're making investments in, so that we can generate broader support for a broader range of shelters and housing and transit. I mean, the full range, because we all, this is not a solution. This is tackling, a critical problem. But part of what we're trying to do is build community support for things that often generate opposition in the city, including investment. And to do that, we we cannot operate as though we are the county or a human services agency as much as we want to. Just like on the stuff we're doing on the home run, there's a lot of education issues with kids I'd like to tackle, but we've been very specific. Here are each of them have to contribute to the following metrics around college completion or workforce readiness or whatever, and we have to do that here too. So I would, for me, it would be important to have the priority, not a limitation, not an absolute limit on participation, but that priority be provided for the folks with the West Sacramento ties. That's absolutely essential. Now, it may be, over a long-term limitation, right? We have to pay attention to the overall incidence of homelessness in the city. Remember, that's the Measure E indicator. The Measure E indicator is not how many homeless individuals got services. It's are the number of people experiencing homelessness in your community, in this community, is that going down? Right, so this is partly to address the concern that we've heard over and over and over again from other residents in the community about the whole magnet issue. which is not necessarily a concern that each and every one of us share, but we have to be paying attention to that if we're going to build the coalition of support. And so in terms of looking at what the metrics are, we need to know what impact are we having on incidents, and what impact are we having on community impact? So you didn't get to the metric piece. I'm hoping you can give some insight as to why these metrics, for example.
Well, and again, it was the same concern of what the main purpose of the program was to provide shelter to those that needed the shelter during the winter months. And in speaking with a coalition member, with Don specifically, they were not sure whether they could go beyond, or they would have the capacity to gather all of the data for those metrics. So we tried to find a middle ground as to what we thought was capturing enough data to see if the program was successful, and then in trying to figure out how many of the participants were actually priority placements that had gone through our homeless coordinator, reaching out to the homeless coordinator to figure out if any of those were still continuing under his services, and try to reach some conclusion joining those two data sets, who they had served and how many of those were priority placements, how many of those priority placements continued to be under the homeless coordinator's care and service.
Yeah, I'll channel Bill again, Mr. Christoph again, because I know, this is a community, we're all the human beings in our community that have lots of different perspectives about this issue, and lots of fears and hopes in both directions. And here's an example of the difference, to the extent to which if someone who's right on the other side of the bridge right now, sleeping overnight on the Sacramento Riverwalk, has no ties to West Sacramento, enters the winter warming shelter here. From these performance metrics, that is a success. And from a humanity perspective, it is a success. From a Measure E perspective, it is not a success if it increases the incidence of homelessness in the city. And we have to be able to disentangle that. When skeptical voters said, I don't want to put any more money into government and your homelessness programs, that's what they were worried about. And we have to do both things. This is not our money to try to do the right thing with. We have to do what that framework is, and so that's where I worry about these metrics. They're participation based, where increased participation is a good thing, but with respect to incidence and impact, that's not. It's one, it may not be relevant, and two, it may actually be counter, and we have to have the data to be able to disentangle that. So, Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma?
Yeah, and then I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, in a lot of the principles you're bringing up, because that's what I was getting at with how do you measure it. So one of the ways you measure it too is on the impacts, and you're right with your example around it's on the Sacramento, a person's on the Sacramento Riverside, no ties to West Sacramento, walks across the bridge and is able to access services. But one of the ways we have to measure too is the person who is on the West Sacramento side with no discernible West Sacramento ties, but is maybe encroaching on a business property for warmth, or somebody else's residence for warmth. That's an impact on it. So one of the ways, so this is where the nexus of your comments come in. Because, yeah, I believe that there should be a priority on this, and I think that's what we need to fight for West Sacramento residents, because we want to show we're reducing the impacts of the incidence of homelessness. But the other example I gave is an impact of homelessness. So one of the measures to think about is, yes, so maybe and I'm just using just easy numbers for easy math here, we have 5 people from West Sacramento that are using the shelters for the winter. That's good to get the priority, but you never set a limit. So if there's another 5 spots, the person that's sleeping on the business that has to clean up the next morning, that's an impact. So we have to measure that too. And at the end, so they may not have ties, but I think that's what we need to think about in this, and you have to measure that, because again, I do believe that this should be geared as much as possible for West Sacramento residents. But that's what we were anchoring around this whole thought around the impacts of homelessness. So I don't want to say that nobody from outside West Sacramento gets access to this, because that's not what we intended either. But the measurements are right on what the mayor's getting at, and I'm not sure we want to do group composition here today, but we have to figure out, because this is a pilot, and these funds aren't going to be guaranteed next year, because these are things you want to look at. So whether it's some way of reducing, I'm just making this up, police contacts with homeless people that were found in business doorways over on Merkley as a way, we 5 people were able to use this program be away. That lessens the impacts on our police force, having to pick people up. Or helps the business owner reduce costs for them, to having to clean up after them. So those are ways to think about it, and I'd ask the folks at the Mercy Coalition to be thinking that way, because when you come back to us next year and you've housed maybe of the 10 people I make up, 4 of them that found some pathway to housing, but you also can articulate to us that, look, we also had reductions in property cleanups. Businesses had surveyed. I don't know what the metrics are, but those are the things that are discernible to us that become our way of saying this was the right use of money, because it did do these things in either way. So I agree with you. I'm just trying to find the right way to articulate that. I don't want to say that those folks with no ties to West Sacramento are having impacts on us, and so I don't want to leave the message here you can't serve anybody else, but they have to be kind of in that realm. That's what I'm thinking about.
Certainly. And if the council is supportive of the program, I would like to propose that if they do approve it, we go back and meet with the coalition to sharpen our performance measures and the priority system that would be implemented, and then have that approved by the city manager or the city attorney or both.
And, Mr. Mayor, I think, and Councilman Ledesma, I think there are a couple of, it could be anecdotal evidence, but there are some things we can really track this year to try to set a baseline for how we can compare year to year. So one would be amount of contacts that the police department has at nighttime hours with homeless in the area. Another could be simply asking the participants where they otherwise would be spending the night. Granted, that's completely anecdotal, but I think there is some value in that, to be able to show that if it weren't for the program, would they be sleeping in front of a particular business, or whatever the case may be. We can at least add that to the intake process.
Yeah, I'm supportive of the Mayor Pro Tem's proposal, in part because I don't agree with what you just said, which is I feel like if we just had this pot of money once and we were doing the thing, I would be totally supportive. I think the program itself is fantastic. We are inventing Measure E, the rules and the precedents of Measure E as we go along. And this program, this is one of the ones that's the most complicated, right? It's not the trail one, okay, we know how to do a trail, we know how to prioritize trails, whatever. This is a complicated one. Because the need is, if we had $100 million, we would still be struggling. And we don't even have $1 million. So we have to be very strategic in what we're doing, in both its impact and its results, and also in the public support for what we're doing. So we have to get it right. And I want to see, not just on this program, but generally, metrics and analytics that are not, they're not for the purpose of showing that the program is working, but for the purpose of determining if it's working. So I don't want to. So I would encourage you not to just come back with a bunch of metrics that we think will come out right. So let's put those down. But really to give us an honest assessment. So at the end of the year, if we make a series of these investments in various pilots, any of which, if we fund them for real in the longer term, are going to cost real money, that we have the ability to make those decisions based on the data, as well as the conflict resolution and all the other factors that go into that. So I support the direction, and having staff and the city manager come up with the metrics and the definition on the priorities that accomplish what we described, but make it real. Make them real metrics that are and I don't mean they need to be double-blind research studies commissioned by UC Davis. I'm not suggesting that at all. Nobody has time or money for that either. But that we're doing the best we can to come up with metrics that get directly at the Measure E, objectives, which are reducing incidents and reducing impact on the community, and it would be possible for a program to fail. not that it's designed to fail, but you could at least imagine a scenario in which some program that we are doing for the right reasons doesn't necessarily work out if it's meaningful evaluative criteria. So.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we would, so we have the consent agenda, that was the only, oh no, I'm sorry, there was one other item, and that was just the smart city item, and that was just a note, you don't need to come forward, John, I was just noting that our city has been selected, I think with 11 other cities, to be part of the inaugural Smart Cities Institute that NYU is organizing for mayors and cities around the country. I'm pretty sure we're the smallest city in the country that's going to be participating in that. So the framework that is on the agenda for tonight, this item is going to be helpful in bringing some additional expertise and resources from other folks in the country as well. All right, so we have the consent agenda, which is items 3 through 11. And with do you want to restate your how you would frame the motion as it replies to item 5?
No, not really. I think we just said the staff would come back with an emphasis or a clarification on prioritization, but not necessarily limits to prioritization of West Sacramento. I see some folks nodding that I think I said that. And the other one is around metrics to ensure we can measure its effectiveness versus the stated Measure E goals of reducing impacts and incidents of homelessness.
Right.
Okay?
All right.
So with that, I'll make the motion for the consent agenda.
All right, and I'm sorry, just to clarify, and not that it needs to come back, but that
And
the city
I agree,
manager
it does,
would
yeah,
determine that.
I'll allow the city manager.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if any guidance, you can seek the mayor pro tem on that.
Sure.
All right, so the consent agenda's been moved and seconded with that modification, item 5. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. God, I wish Bill Christoph was here for himself.
Yeah, you don't channel him well.
I heard him in my head. I heard him in my head for 25 years or something. So, and it's not. Yeah. So, and I know Ms. Pearson was with us for many of those. So, all right. Thank you, and thanks to the coalition for coming out and keeping at this. And yeah, we are. Despite our wonky debate, we're really excited and appreciative of. I mean, because we're dealing with dollars. You're dealing with volunteer time, heart. And tough cases and stories that, I mean, you've heard from my colleagues who said it much better than I can, how much we appreciate, but how much the community, but the folks that you're working with directly in the community, how much you're carrying the heart and the spirit of this place in the work every day. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to item 12, which is consideration of the 2012-18 West Sacramento Safe Routes to School program. Ms. Strand.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Sarah Strand, Associate Transportation Planner with the Department of Public Works, and I'm pleased to present this item to you tonight. The purpose of which is to provide a recap of the city's Safe Routes to School program since its inception in 2012. For those who may be less familiar, Safe Routes to School programs emerged about 20 years ago as part of a national movement to combat air quality and congestion around schools, as well as the nation's childhood obesity epidemic, and more broadly to help fight climate change by encouraging more trips to be taken using sustainable transportation options. In West Sacramento, the Safe Routes to School program has been an important tool to help identify and develop solutions for barriers to walking and biking at schools. And the program has required ongoing partnership and collaboration between Walk Sacramento and the Sacramento area bicycle advocates, the city's transportation planning and engineering staff, West Sacramento Police Department, and most importantly, the Washington Unified School District faculty, staff, students, and their families. The West Sacramento Safe Routes to School program has been entirely funded through a federal Cycle 3 Safe Routes to School program grant that was administered by Caltrans, and that required no local match. In 2012, the city was awarded $496,000 to begin implementing this program in partnership with the school district, and that was at all public K-8 schools in the city of West Sacramento. And an additional $50,000 was awarded to the city by Caltrans just this past January to extend the program through the 2018-19 school year for some unmet needs. Over the course of the program, the majority of these funds were expended through multiple professional services contracts with the nonprofit Walk Sacramento, who is here this evening to provide more details on the great work that they've been doing out in the community and in West Sacramento schools. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Molly Wagner, who is Walk Sacramento's project lead and coordinator here in West Sacramento, to come up and provide some more information.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, hello, my name is Molly Wagner. I'm the project coordinator at Walk Sacramento and overseeing the implementation of this program. So just background on Walk Sacramento, we're a nonprofit community-based organization that works in the Sacramento region to ensure our communities are walkable and healthy. We do this in a number of different ways through working with local governments to ensure that policies provide opportunities for active transportation and acknowledge the benefits and need of those. Our Safe Routes to School programs are broken up into 6 different categories, what we like to call the 6 E's: education, encouragement, enforcement, evaluation, engineering, and equity. I'm going to break down the first 5 of these elements in a couple more slides, but I wanted to just make a note on equity. Equity is a priority focus in all of the first 5 E's that we have, and making sure that our Safe Routes to School programs are accessible for all students of all ages and abilities. For education includes immersive, hands-on educational programs for our students to ensure lifelong safety habits. They're fantastic opportunities for students to explore all kinds of modes of sustainable transportation through fun ways. And throughout our educational programs, we've worked with teachers to develop in-class curriculum as well as out-of-class full education days. For the duration of this grant, many of our 1st and 2nd graders that received education very early on are now 6th and 7th graders and are receiving education again. Overall, over 5,000 students have been able to participate in our education programs. Our encouragement programs are oftentimes some of the most well-known programs about Safe Routes to School. They are opportunities to reward students for walking and biking, as well as a fantastic opportunity to engage the broader community in rallying behind active transportation modes. These programs include National Walk and Bike to School Days, as well as walking school bus programs that are led by parents and the community members, and also family-friendly bike rides. Throughout the duration of our program, we've had about 6,500 students, parents, staff, and community members participate in encouragement programs. Enforcement is our 3rd E and is broken up into 2 different areas. The first one is our partnership with the West Sacramento PD. They have been fantastic in not only identifying certain areas of enforcement near our schools, but also attending education and encouragement events to help build a broader and positive relationship with our students. The second part of enforcement is working with the schools and their crossing guards and ensuring that they have the tools and resources they need to ensure a daily safe travel environment. For evaluation, this is kind of where we start to get in about what are the barriers that parents and students have to active travel right now. Those include student travel tally surveys that identify mode share within our students, as well as parent surveys. Those parent surveys start to get into more questions about why students choose to walk and bike to school and what are their parents' concerns with that. One of the key products that comes out of that schools tend to really love are pick-up and drop-off guidelines, which reinforce safety guidelines around the school, and it's also their first step in developing a travel plan. And then in addition to that, safe walking and biking maps, so also helping students and their families make travel plans together. For engineering, this is really where our community walk audits come into play. Our community walk audits are the crux of our Safe Routes to School programs and understanding the built environment and what's going on during those students' commutes to and from school. These also provide a fantastic space for our school stakeholders and community stakeholders to come together to discuss some of the concerns that they have, identify opportunities for improvement, and develop solutions together. One thing I want to point out with the walk audit is that those reports are then provided to the school and the city for identifying future recommendations for improvements. One specific result that's come out of that is the Safe Routes to School chapter for the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Master Plan, which you have in front of you. I do want to highlight that this chapter is meant to support existing projects identified within the master plan itself, and it's really focused on student travel. And then just some key takeaways. Again, those walk audits are critical in helping the city go after funding and identify future grants. One success example of that is the Sycamore Trail Overcrossing project, where the walk audits were influential in helping win that money. Additionally, our walk audits and Safe Routes to School programs have helped the city of West Sacramento upgrade from a bronze to silver level bicycle-friendly community. Additional wins include working with the California Department of Public Health, who has donated 23 bike racks to all 7 of our elementary schools, as well as River City High School. And then lastly, over the summer, we have launched a pilot wayfinding program that was aimed at developing or encouraging our community members and families to take active travel to other destinations in West Sacramento, in addition to those school trips. This program was the first of its kind in the region at the district level and was partially funded by a SACOG TDM mini grant. The feedback that we received from it was very well received and will actually go into informing a permanent wayfinding program that was funded by the Air District. And with that, I will pass it back to Sarah to talk about next steps for Safe Routes to School. Thank you.
All right, so Walk Sacramento's current contract to work with public K-8 schools in West Sacramento will be expiring along with the original Cycle 3 Safe Routes to School funds at the end of the 2018-19 school year. Since 2012, the federal grant that has been supporting the city's program has actually limited eligible schools to only public K-8s. So the city has actually been unable to offer resources to other schools in the community. However, the city was recently awarded $80,000 from the SACOG traditional TDM grant program to develop and implement a new and innovative Safe Routes to School program that will enable the city to partner with River City High School and interested private and charter schools in West Sacramento, and will be able to offer these types of activities and resources. And what's actually the most innovative component of that program will be the outreach that we do with the high school, because there's not a lot of standard curriculum that's been developed for Safe Routes at the teenage level. So the new 2-year program will be rolled out in participating schools starting in the 2019-20 school year and run through 2020-21, after which all allocated funds for the city's Safe Routes to School program will expire. No additional funds have been identified to support the program for future years at this time, and unless otherwise directed by City Council to explore additional funding sources for future years, the program will come to an end at that time. On Monday evening, this item was presented to the Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission. At that time, staff requested feedback and a recommendation on the adoption of the draft Safe Routes to School appendix that's included as attachment 1 of your report. The commissioners did note the higher number of traffic collisions around Westfield Village Elementary and Westmore Oaks Elementary, and made a request that staff ensure that the recommendations in the appendix were adequately addressing concerns identified at these locations. And staff did clarify these higher numbers were essentially contributed to these schools because of their proximity to West Capitol Avenue, where there's actually not a high volume of students crossing or using those routes to get to the schools. And much of those concerns will be addressed with the active West Capitol Avenue Safety and Rehabilitation Project, as well as the Sycamore Phase 2 overpass. Ultimately, the TMI Commission did unanimously recommend that the City Council adopt the appendix with the condition that a reference map be added into the appendix, just so it's easier to visually see where the recommendations are. And staff will be working with Walk Sacramento to implement that component. So at this time, I'd like to submit staff's request that the City Council adopt the Safe Routes to School appendix to the 2018 updated Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Master Plan with the addition of a reference map, and I'll conclude my presentation so that the City Council can submit any questions or feedback they have at this time.
Mr. Johannesson.
Yeah, thank you. Sir, on the appendix, the kind of the 6 E's of safe route to schools, the last is equity, and that basically says that efforts to ensure safe routes to schools are inclusive of people of all ages, abilities, ethnicities, genders, and orientations. So this program is really related to safe routes to school. So it's the students getting to school, having more active, kind of ingraining activity in their daily routines to help obesity and some of the other issues. But there's also kind of this overlay on the equity portion on when these routes are completed, it's also safe for seniors, for example, or mobility. So how does that, when you're looking at this, the master plan, how does that kind of blend in? Because we have the age-friendly plan that deals with similar issues, and we have this that deals with school-age kids. So how do you see that kind of blending together?
Yeah, I can say a couple of things to that. First off, there's going to be a lot of overlap when you're building safe infrastructure for school children. It inevitably will also be safer for seniors and other folks. But there has also been discussion, and I don't know if John Robinson wants to add anything, of actually adding an appendix that is safe routes for seniors as well to the Bike Ped Trails Master Plan. I'm not sure the status of that, but that's something that we would be coordinating on to make sure that both this appendix and that are in close alignment with each other.
Yeah, because I think, you've got the issues prioritized, and obviously there's issues with Westfield Village and the intersections you mentioned. But you could have a situation where you have something that's a medium priority for safe route to school, but it's a high priority for senior transportation, and try to come up with a matrix so you've got a prioritization that accomplishes more goals. So.
Absolutely, and I'll just add, the appendix is, it's an advisory companion document, so it's really just providing that robust data set and some recommendations to help as an extra overlay to those priorities that are set forth by the Bike Ped Trails Master Plan.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Orozco.
Thank you. Sarah, this is actually pretty timely, because it was just a few hours ago that I was standing at Summerfield Park listening to a complaint from a resident who was highly concerned about the children that keep jaywalking across the street. There's no school there. I mean, Southport is down the way on Linden, but there's a bus stop that drops off twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon. And we just so happen to see a lot of residents in the community. And every morning there's an elderly gentleman who brings his basketball because there's a basketball court. This is a highly populated during the soccer season. Because it's a soccer park and a dog park. And it's also an artery to Patwin Park if you don't want to go all the way in to Bridgeway Islands through Marshall or Southport. But right where Brenda Way hits Linden Loop, there is a wide open space and an outlet into that community where people will come from that community and just run across the street, and it's not safe. And I can understand why there may be policy or safety considerations behind, how you put a crosswalk there and whether or not that gives people a false sense of security and being in the crosswalk. But I can't, in good faith, just abandon the idea that we can't come up with some type of, lighting or alternative where people in the community who are attracted to that park and want to get there by foot don't have a safe way of getting there unless they go all the way down by the Montessori school or Southport Elementary in order to get there. So I think we really need to look at that. The other complaint, and I've already sent that to our city manager, I'm hoping that it's being addressed, and I do actually, I think I see it here, Village Parkway and Reading Road, is that near Stonegate?
Yeah.
Okay, that was great. I'm glad to see that's on a high priority. I saw that the community input was a factor in the prioritization, but the school community identified the improvement as a high priority. And in this case, there's no school community at that location other than that out-of-district school that happens to drop off 30 to 40 kids twice a day at the end of the day. And there are cars that are coming around that blind corner, and I just want to make sure that we aren't in a situation where we have to look back on a bad situation if we have the foresight and the ability to tackle it now. I did see something on the medium list, and it was the Linden Road and Summerfield Park. Could you explain what that is, and if it is something that we are considering, is there a timeline, or how does that all work?
Sure. So all of the recommendations set forth in the appendix are simply that, the recommendations. Some of them do have traction and are moving forward at various levels at the city. For example, the Highland location that you're talking about did get a little bit of funding in the last CIP. The Linden Road and Summerfield Park recommendation is proposing to put an offset diagonal crossing, basically from the center of the park through that median there's a cul-de-sac, and I don't know the name off the top of my head, where you can walk through that connectivity. So that's what's been discussed. It hasn't been drawn out in design or anything like that. We have explored some potential grant funding for it. In the last cycle of the Highway Safety Improvement Program, we did submit a number of these crossings for pedestrian crossing enhancements. That one did not make the list in this past round because it's quite expensive and it would be on the cap of what was allowable to ask for from that grant program. But some of the others on here have been proposed, and we'll be hearing back in December or January on those items.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, and I speak from personal experience, having the benefit of being there every day, twice a day, to see it with my own eyes. And we had West Sac Police Department actually responded a few weeks back. It was great responsiveness, but I mean, to some extent, we're going to have to be calling, on the resources of our officers to continue to respond to that area, and hopefully not under bad circumstances. So I appreciate your looking at that area, and thank you for the report.
Sure. And I'll actually add one more thing that I just thought of that may address some of your comments, which is that we do have our staff meets regularly, our engineering and police department and fire department as part of our traffic committee, and they do take a lot of these recommendations into consideration and how they prioritize and when they are looking for funding to address these types of issues. This feeds right into that decision-making process before it comes to the commissions and the council.
Councilmember Sandin.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I'm completely supportive of having us adopt this appendix to the master plan. So it's really helpful to have the background and to have it laid out. I found, as Councilmember Roscoe mentioned, I've had some of these areas brought to my attention as well, and so it's helpful to actually see the identification that's actually in a kind of priority list. So, and that we're working on it, or at least some of them, but hopefully all of them. I think it also provides us, as we're moving forward, to find other funding to continue this program. And I just had one quick question about the traffic collisions that you mentioned. What's the period of time that in that table?
Sure. So it's a 5-year, and it's pulled from our Crossroads database, so it's the most immediate past 5 years.
Okay.
But I think that was done a few months ago, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Sarah, for the presentation, and I too am supportive, but I do have some questions you brought up in your presentation. I kind of want to revisit for clarification. This is only covering really kind of K-8 areas, right? And so you had a slide on there that addressed, and I kind of want you to revisit it because it kind of this flew over my head a little bit, around how we're going to address kind of the high school, private, and charter schools. I'm having 2 in mind, 3 in mind, to be honest with you.
Sure.
So if you can just kind of revisit sort of what you're asking for, or what you're maybe where we may be going.
Absolutely.
To address that. Thank
I'd
you.
be happy to clarify that. So the work that we've been doing with the K-8 schools in partnership with Walk Sacramento, that will continue through this current school year, through the middle of 2019.
Right.
Separate from that, we've got a new funding source from the SACOG Traditional TDM Grant Program, and that's in the amount of $80,000. What we're going to be doing is kicking off, we're in the contracting process for that grant agreement right now. Once we kick off, we're going to be working on developing the curriculum and kind of the overall game plan for moving forward with that new program. The biggest work we'll have to do is focusing on the high school and making sure that the programs that are developed are tailored, and working with the school district to make sure that they might actually be impactful, working with a very different population. And then we'll be doing outreach to all of the local private and charter schools. It'll be on an opt-in basis. But if you have recommendations on folks that you think would be interested to work with, we know that we did work with Lighthouse Charter on their traffic and transportation demand management plan. They had expressed interest at that time, as well as a couple of folks from Our Lady of Grace have expressed some interest. So we do have some contacts out there to move forward with. After that is developed, we would hope to be kicking it off in the 2019-2020 school year. After that, we would take the summer to basically do an assessment of year one, do some, lessons learned, best practices, make adjustments for the second year of the program.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was after, so I appreciate you clarifying that, because because a lot of the areas on your high and medium list are familiar to me, for a lot of the reasons that Councilmember Roscoe and Sandine just articulated. But an area that I'm always drawn to is in the low area, which is the Linden and Stonegate area. I know we tried to get a grant for, was it urban greening grant, and we weren't able to get it. And it's next to a private school, OOG, and a high school. And there has been problems there just for years now. And we always knew that was coming with the high school. But it's not walkable. It's barely walkable because the sidewalks are lacking on both sides. The north side of Linden, obviously next to OG, is a problem. But it's just this crossing that area back and forth to the town center. The crossing we have there is the Clarksburg Branch Line Trail. Acts as sort of a buffer, but it's just an area that I know is not in scope for this. And I just want to call that out because it is low here, but it's a really impactful area. So if there's another way to get to it, I'm very interested in, and we need to engage. Obviously, you got the high school in mind. They have the majority of the impacts because they have kids walking back and forth, crossing the street, a busy Linden road at that 3 o'clock. It's like they're playing Frogger between cars, the misaligned ingress egress out of the high school and the shopping center. And then you have just 100 feet away, OOG parents coming in and out of a mainly pickup school. And so it's just an area I'm just kind of, again, putting a highlight around. I know we weren't able to get the grant last year or this past year, but it's something I just wanted to make sure that we have a strategy. So thank you for articulating that. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I'm supportive of it as well. I think it'll be helpful this is part of an overall safe routes program, of which engineering is only one of the 6 elements. And it's not coming with any money to actually engineer any solutions or make any capital improvements. And one thing that's been emphasized to me over the last few weeks is that we need to be careful about the expectations that we're creating. There is definitely a palpable sense that the city can do anything, and we do a lot, and we've made some really transformative changes, but we don't have. Look at just, if we, to meet all of our ADA requirements would be tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. To do all of our safe routes objectives, even the highs alone would be tens of or $100 million to do. I mean, that's just in those 2 areas, right? And that's across every domain of what the city does. And I used to say we're not Roseville, so we can't afford that, but Roseville now has a $100 million deficit, so they can't either. When I first came on council, I think I took Councilmember Tuttle's seat on the traffic committee, which was reviewing crosswalks and speed bump requests and everything. And even then, I think we could fund 1 a year. And our capacity right now is very, very low. So and I think society is in a mode where it's like government works for me. And so whatever change I want in my city right now, it must happen, and especially in a city that's seen as successful. And we just have to be. It can turn toxic very fast when people feel as though their expectations weren't being met. And so so in terms of the way we frame what this document really is. As an appendix to a plan, the Parks and Trails plan itself doesn't have that much money behind it either. It's really, really important. So that what I like about this is it's when if you're like, okay, I know what the biggest problem in the city is that there's no sidewalk on the other side of 5th Street from where I live. Right? That's the biggest problem in the city. What I love about this is I can say, maybe I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one because just like in my own house, there's a gazillion things on my list of things I'd like to improve that I can't afford to deal with right now. And my house is always a work in progress, and so is the city. And sometimes we have to convey that. There is zero chance that we are going to achieve perfection in Safe Routes next week. And so we're going to go at it. We're going to keep applying for these grants, and we've been remarkably successful at doing that. But we all have to pull at it together and celebrate the achievement. When we get the one, if we got one of these funded on the high list, let's have a party, because that's a big deal to get the resources and to make that happen, and not have the one be a reason to complain about the fact that the other ones weren't. And I just feel like we need to continue to do that as we're developing these kind of planning documents. But this is great work. But also to focus then on the other 5 E's as well. That the education and the other elements are just as important as the engineering. That a crosswalk alone, all by itself, if you're not dealing with both the safety, how children are walking, but also how drivers are driving, which is the biggest one. If we're not dealing with that, every time there's a collision or an accident, drivers say, well, they should have been wearing a helmet and there should have been a bike lane, but really, somebody should have been driving a lot safer. I mean, in every one of those cases. So it's all of it together that we're going to have to bring to bear, both because we don't have the resources to make only engineering solutions, and because engineering is an essential, critical, but not sufficient solution to making sure that young people in our community can walk and bike and scooter to school. So great work. It's really helpful. The Walk Sacramento partnership has been phenomenal in producing, really, really, in partnership with the school district and others in city government, been phenomenal at really producing innovative, impactful outcomes for changing the game. And this is a good step forward, so thank you. All right, if there's no other comments, is there a motion on item 12?
Moved. I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Orozco, seconded by Councilmember Sandin. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Amanda, council calendar.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. A couple of events that are coming up and that are actually not on your calendar. This Sunday, November 11th, there's going to be a Veterans Day Parade that the city is co-sponsoring. And that's going to be at 1 p.m. and it's going to go through the Westmore Oaks State Streets neighborhood. Then on Monday is our Veterans Day holiday, so City Hall and offices will be closed. And then on November 23rd, which is on your calendar, Friday, there's the annual Toy Drive Collection Day at Walmart that the police department organizes. That's at 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then November 30th, which is a Friday, will be the West Sacramento Winter Wonderland, our tree lighting and holiday celebration. That'll be at City Hall from 6 to 9. And I'd also like to, as a resident and a city staff member, I just want to thank Councilmember Johannesson for his leadership here at the city and wish you the best of luck with your future endeavors. Thank you.
All right, any questions on the calendar? Seeing none, city manager report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been mentioned a couple times tonight, but there was an election yesterday. I did want to touch on a few things of local interest, not on the local level, but on the state level. We were watching a couple of key propositions, nothing you don't know already, but just how it relates back to the city. Prop 6, which would have repealed SB 1, obviously failed. For West Sacramento, that protects about $1.2 million a year in road rehab funding, plus access to a lot of other competitive grant funds, which we plan to apply for. So that was a key measure. The other two I'll mention are Props 1 and 2. Those were the housing bonds. They both passed. The one that is most relevant was Prop 2, which authorized the No Place Like Home program to move forward. We're planning an application for that program in January for our supportive housing project. So that was a good outcome on the state level. You already mentioned kind of the status of ballots being counted right now at the local level. Measure N it currently stands at about a 50.5% margin, so we'll be watching that. I know the city clerk has been in contact with the YOLO elections office just to get updates on that process. And I did want to acknowledge Chris and all her work throughout this season. Been a been a lot of work, and she's done a fantastic job managing the whole process. So I want to acknowledge her for that. And like you mentioned, we're tentatively targeting December 19th as the swearing in for the council, but we'll see how the certification process goes and schedule from there. I also wanted to echo Amanda's comments on thanking Councilmember Johannesson. On behalf of staff, including a lot of us that have been here the entire time of your tenure, including myself, someone that started in their career working on affordable housing issues and bringing new projects that weren't always the most popular. Definitely appreciated your support and just the fact that you always got it. Your steady presence on the council, I think, a key to keeping the cohesiveness of this council over those years. So really appreciate it. And like Amanda said, wish you well on your next adventure. So thank you.
Questions for the city manager? Well, I was going to say something, but I'll do it under staff direction. City attorney report?
Nothing to report.
Okay, staff direction. So I just want to I'll add my thanks to the city clerk. I think, you know, after the 2016 election, the council had a couple of significant policy discussions about, you know, all of the what appeared to be, you know, disrespect for the city's rules and laws and municipal ordinances, and that it was creating an unfair environment for campaigning, and as well as a lot of visual clutter and other sorts of things. And the city clerk worked really hard on all the policies and procedures, but then during the season itself, both she and I know code enforcement as well in partnership, for all of the, you know, what may have been one of the craziest elections we've had in a decade at least, did an outstanding job. And just on the sign piece alone, which I think is the most visible, the amount of illegal signage and what have you was dramatically less than it often is, or it has always been. And that's a combination of both enforcement and also the really stellar work by the clerk to educate and hold accountable candidates all through that process. So I just wanted, you know, after the last one, I know Councilmember Sandine had raised several issues, and I had as well, and it was a visible difference, and I think it caused all the candidates to act in a better way across the board as a result. And then also I just personally want to. I know for staff in City Hall and the department directors as well, but and throughout the departments, that an election is, you know, not your business unless you, except to the extent to which you live here and cast a vote, but that you get swept up in the whole thing too, and that the challenges and the debates and the discussions and sometimes the charges and the fake truths and all the stuff that happens in all elections hits you, and if you live here as well, it maybe hits you twice. And this one in particular, there was a lot of stuff that the city does, and many things that individual staff work on and put their heart and soul into, and things were said and done and what have you, as they are in many elections, but this one was a little bit more intense. And I know how challenging it has been, and and I just want to express my appreciation, and I think the whole community, you know, the whole community clearly does value what the staff of the city of West Sacramento does. Without regard to any particular results. I mean, it is clear people are appreciative and they're proud of what the city does and the progress that the city makes and what you all do and how you do it. And so I know it was a difficult time in whatever your political disposition was. It was a difficult and challenging time just to be a staffer, just working on these issues while the fate of the world is in the balance and charges are flying everywhere that you can't do anything about. But thank you for all of you. Everyone was incredibly professional, and ultimately the citizens of this community definitely value and appreciate the really great work. So. Okay, we don't have any future agenda item requests. I don't think so. Mr. Johannesson is the most reliable mover of adjournment in the city's history, and Councilmember Sandine's right up there with him. So Mr. Johannesson moves and Ms. Sandine seconds that the meeting be adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.